Welcome back, guys, or if you're new to my channel, this is Automotive Anonymous. That's a 2025 Subaru Outback Wilderness, and that's a 2024 carryover year to 2025 Subaru Forester Wilderness. And there's a lot to talk about. I used to own an Outback Wilderness. We currently own the new generation Subaru Forester, and today I'm going to show you everything from the front to the back to everything else in between of these two vehicles. The Outback is in the infamous Geyser Blue paint color, which looks fantastic in person. At MSRPs, the way this one is fully loaded for about $45,000 before about a $1,000 discount, and the Subaru Forester Wilderness, it's about a $39,000 MSRP before a $3,000 discount currently offered, so it's about a $36,000 vehicle. So there's a lot to see that's similar, but also a lot that's different between these two very popular wilderness trim levels. And if you guys get anything out of this video today, please consider liking it, comment your thoughts and opinions below, subscribe if you haven't already. Otherwise, let's dive right in. But before we get too far into this video, it is worth mentioning that a few weeks ago I posted this video of a Subaru that's been lifted that I called a Wilderness with an asterisk at the end of Wilderness, kind of as a joke, but kind of not, because this would be a pretty interesting Wilderness, and this might be an idea of what the new generation is going to look like if it actually comes to fruition. But if not, you can already start to modify your own current generation Subaru Forester Wilderness, or you can buy this, the carryover year, which you can get several $1,000s off. You can finance it for less than 1% if that's the route you need to go. But honestly, after even driving this over to my disclosed location, it is very refreshing to drive a Subaru with physical HVAC controls. But a lot of us maybe already know the differences between these Wildernesses and the regular Subarus. But if you don't, there are raised roof rail ratings. These can both hold about 700 pounds on their roof. They both have a bunch of copper accents. They both can tow at the peak of their towing ratings. The Outback is 3,500 pounds. The Forester is about 3,000 pounds. They both have a transmission cooler. They both have some different front fascia cladding and other cladding throughout the vehicles. But there's actually quite a few differences that you guys also should know. The Outback currently costs $40,000 for the Wilderness. Meanwhile, the Wilderness Forester is about $35,000. But for that extra $5,000, not only do you get a bunch of nicer creature comforts and interior bits, but you also get about 100 more pound-feet of torque, 80 more horsepower. You have about 400 pounds of more vehicle weight, so it's a little bit more stable on the road, especially where this is a foot longer with a 3-inch wheelbase. That is noticeable, especially on road trips. The Outback is the more stable vehicle, but the Forester, being a little bit shorter and squattier, it might be the better off-roader. It does lack about 0.2 of an inch of ground clearance, but both of these have raised suspension well over 9 inches. 9.2 for the Forester, 9.5 for the Outback. They both also have plastic skid plates. You can easily spend a few $100s to upgrade the armor underneath your bodies of these vehicles, but these skid plates are complete garbage. I had taken mine off when I did the light bar on my Outback Wilderness, and it was nothing more than a piece of plastic with a little bit of tin foil basically lining the front of it. But these are very good vehicles. They can both be bought for around $40,000, fully loaded, and they have a lot that they offer, so there's a lot to consider. Under the hood of these, you have the two most mainstream platforms that Subaru offers. The turbo 2.4 liter, which has a lot of upgraded components over old turbos of the past. You also have an internal hood scoop to blow cold air right onto the intercooler to help that turbo out. But otherwise, all the reservoirs, all the maintenance items are right here along the periphery of the vehicle. These are super easy to work on. This is the only unibody crossover that I know of, which is Subaru in general with their global platform, that has a longitudinally mounted engine setup, like a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So the serpentine belt is right here. It's not crammed in right there with 1 inch of room to work on it. So these are super easy to work on, everything but the spark plugs down low. And if we hop over to the 2.5 liter, 182 horsepower Forester, you'll notice this all looks the exact same. You can still see the serpentine belt, the alternator, the AC compressor, but this is also the last generation of Subaru Forester that had the engine cover. Before Subaru decided, you know what guys, we need to save $4 per unit, so we're no longer going to include that. Honestly, I'd rather look at the engine anyways, because that's always just a hassle to get off, to throw on the ground, to get out of the way when you do want to look at the engine. So these are both really stout platforms that have been refined for a lot of years. That's why Subaru is now the #1 brand in reliability per Consumer Reports. And after owning both of these platforms, the 2.5 in our current Forester and the 2.4 for over 3 years and 44,000 miles, they've both been flawless, they've both been phenomenal, and I like them both a lot. But the Outback is drastically quicker. This can do, actually I rated this earlier today, it did 6.97 0 to 60, or 6.6, and that's at several thousand feet of elevation. So these are no slouch. Meanwhile, the Forester's still a little bit faster being the Wilderness than the regular one because of the 411 final axle ratio. It's probably going to do about a 9-second flat on the same test today. So the Outback is about 2 seconds faster if that matters to you. If you drive up the mountain passes, if you have the vehicle fully loaded with their 900-pound payload capacities, or you're towing 3,000 pounds, I do think you might want to consider the Subaru Outback, especially where it is more stable in general, being a little bit longer and having a longer wheelbase. I actually think the rear of both of these vehicles look pretty good. I really like the Subaru Wilderness badge. The cladding and the design of the copper recovery points, that doesn't really bother me, but I know that not everyone likes that, so thankfully the Forester doesn't really have that the same way. But it's just nice. The badges are blacked out. I just think that these look pretty good for the trim levels of these generations because depending on the paint color, depending on the chrome, the options, I'm not always fond of the back of compact crossovers and mid-size crossovers. Sometimes it seems like the companies run out of money when they're designing the rear, but I do think that the back of both of these is really nice. And then they have the same proximity key with lock, unlock, power liftgate because they both are optioned with that, and panic button. But what's really cool is you can pay a couple $100 for a few-year subscription of the My Subaru app, and you can do remote start. You can unlock, lock the vehicle, you can locate it. You can do a lot of things through the app, even change the HVAC controls, which is one of the benefits of the big touchscreen that has mixed reviews that I'll show you in just a few minutes. But if I open these power lift gates at the same time in 3, 2, 1, let's see which one opens first and we'll go over to that one. All right, I think the Outback's the winner. Depending on if you have the subwoofer or not in the back, it's about 33 to 34 cubic feet behind the second row. When you drop the seats, which you have these fancy handles to do so, the seats lay nearly flat because of the 16-foot length of this vehicle. You could easily car camp in here if you're roughly 6 feet or below, maybe a little bit taller, but it's going to be less and less comfortable the taller you are. You have some bag clips. You also have an LED light up here that you can turn on or off. If this was like a base model Outback, you'd have a handle because you wouldn't have a power liftgate. But overall, even with all the cladding, with the full-size spare tire hidden under here, it's just a nice place to be. And if you don't like the privacy shade, like I don't because it just gets in the way, there's some slots down here that you can hide it. There's also a little bit more storage. So what are you guys going to hide next to this full-size Geolandar all-terrain tire? Comment that below. But this mat doesn't always like to lay flat. Sometimes you have to finagle it just a little bit. But if we come over to this one, the Forester is only down 2 to 3 feet on cubic space. It still has around 31 back here, depending on how it's configured. This one's missing a little bit of storage because it does have the subwoofer. You can also drop the seats on this though, which is pretty cool. They drop just as well. You have this little flap that folds up. You have the electronically powered power liftgate, which has lock and unlock. You can also kind of set the hatch position. There's a few different ways to open it. Because this is the Forester Wilderness, not the Crosstrek Wilderness, you also have a full-size Geolandar all-terrain tire down here and a little bit of extra storage and a place to hide that if you don't want that as well. But when you do drop the seats of this, you have about 70 cubic feet. So you are down about 5 cubic feet compared to the next size, which is why the seat might not want to drop unless you have the seats a little bit further forward. Both of these vehicles have the gas tank located on the passenger side. The Outback is a little bit worse on gas mileage because of its more aggressive 444 final axle ratio compared to a 411, and then because it has that thirsty turbo. So this one is rated for 21 in the city, 26 on the highway. Max road trip and range is around 481 miles. Meanwhile, this is rated for about 25 in the city, about 28 on the highway. So max road trip and range is about 464. And then it has a one size smaller tire, which helps a little bit for the MPG. This is a 225/60/17, which looks really nice. The Geolandar all-terrain tires on my Outback lasted about 7:30 seconds of tread depth at 44,000 miles. So it probably had another 20,000 miles to go, which is why I bought them for the RAV4 that replaced it. This is a little bit bigger though. It's a 225/65 width sidewall, and then a 17 as well. Both of these actually have a slightly different wheel, if you guys haven't noticed that. Just like the Crosstrek Wilderness has its own unique wheel. And then both of these have a wall of black plastic cladding with the name of the model written in. You can get more plastic cladding on this Outback than it comes with. I highly recommend you don't, but that's just my opinion, and that's all it's worth. And while I'm going to be speaking in generalities for the next 30 seconds or so, it is worth mentioning that most Subaru owners are not going to be abusing their $35,000 to $45,000 cars. They're going to maybe take it to the trailhead. to the fishing hole, up their favorite mountain pass for some skiing or snowboarding, but they're not going to do any hardcore off-roading. They might do some very light soft-roading, but between the soft and forgiving suspension while being capable in these cars, the Subaru symmetrical all-wheel drive system with the constantly rotating drive shaft that really helps the handling of these vehicles, and the sidewall that you get even on the slightly smaller Subaru Forester Wilderness tires, these things can easily do more than most of the owners are ever going to want to take them on. They can easily climb and come down a sidewalk. They can easily get you to the places that you want to go, and it's going to do it well. You're going to have a lot of fun in the process. But let's hop inside each of these vehicles and talk about what they have to offer. The Forester Wilderness has a lot of different materials on the door card, kind of like most Subarus. You still have the lunar moon landing surface like you had on the other Foresters before this generation disappeared, which I like. The door panels hold up well. The doors open very wide. It makes it very convenient to hop inside the vehicle. Just make sure that if you're not at least 3 or 4 feet away from the other vehicle, you're careful because the door might open wide enough that you can bump them. Otherwise, this is pretty loaded for $39,000. These are your options. You have all-weather mats, StarTech seats, which they don't get as hot or as cold as leather. They aren't as breathable as cloth, but I loved my StarTech seats, especially in the summer. I think Subaru does really good StarTech seats, especially compared to some other vehicles I've been in by other automakers. And when you fire it up with the push-button start, check it out. Steering responsive headlights, they move around, and this is what you want. This is the old school screen. Sure, the CD player disappeared a year or two earlier, but you still have HVAC controls that are physical. You still have some storage down here without a fancy pants wireless charger that doesn't work very well. You have your plugins, your 12 volt. You even have the upper display, which I really like. This doesn't have a heated steering wheel, but it does have the nice Harman Kardon speakers. It does have sport mode for the transmission tuning. The horn, it's very loud, like a lot of Subarus, especially when you're up against a wall. But honestly, this is a nice place to be. You have your X mode down here, so you don't have to go through a silly screen to get to it. And then you have a front-facing camera, which the Outback has, but this is a small one. So keep that in mind. I can still see pretty darn well though. Some cup holders, CD tray from when these used to have CD players, and then a decent sized center console with a 12 volt. Otherwise, you have sunglass holder, the huge sunroof, just like the new Foresters, the biggest in the class other than what the Ascents have. Those sometimes have a bigger sunroof. And then are these LED? They are, but this does not extend off. It just has a little slide piece and LED lighting right there too. So guys, I have missed this. This is really refreshing to be in. And this is a big reason why some people buy the carryover year Forester Wilderness. But let's hop into the Outback and see how it compares. The Outback Wilderness has a lot of the same features approaching it. It has the light up when you're near if the vehicle's locked. It has the turn signals. It has the blind spot monitoring over here. The door panel probably has a variety of textures too. You have some plastics. You have a few different other materials. You have the Wilderness little tag, which I like, and I actually think that's pretty cool. I don't think that's a tacky thing in person. It looks pretty nice. But otherwise, you're gonna be looking at about the same thing. It doesn't have as many options on the dashboard right there. You can see the knee airbag. These are both top safety picks. You have a fuse box, which is where I hid the LED light bar activation switch on mine, how we wired it through the firewall. You have your pedals, your dead pedal, which not every compact crossover and mid-size crossover even has a dead pedal. So thank you, Subaru, for including that. Really bright LED headlight stock, trip reset, StarTech seats. I love them. They're powered. But then you have the baby-sized sedan sunroof up top. And when we hop inside and we fire this puppy up, the LED headlights are bright enough that you can still see them on the wall. They do the steering responsive display, and you have quite a bit of information you can go through in here. The horn, it's loud, just like the Forester, probably the same one. But this is the screen. Start stop is right here. It's not a physical button. And not everyone loves the screen. There's a piece of film over it, so you're not going to see it nearly as well right now. You get used to it. The important stuff is still physical on the side. Tuning and volume dials, the hazard button. But I like the physical stuff. That's just me, but I know that's not everyone's opinion. Otherwise, you have some more plugins down here, electronic parking brake. Front-facing camera, which is going to look extra bad through this screen. The clarity of Subarus for their cameras is not fantastic, but they're big enough that you can see what's going on. You have some cup holders. You have a dual stage center console with the 12 volt as well. And then basically the same displays up here that you got on the Forester. Nothing new, nothing less, other than this actually slides rather than just extends. So that is a nicer touch, one of the nicer features on this one. And then overall, it's just a really nice place to be. Visibility in both of these vehicles is fantastic. The back seats and the whole cargo capacity of the second row is fantastic on both of these. It kind of is going to depend on how your torso to leg proportions are, but there's a lot of room, so I think even if you're up to maybe 6'3", 6'4", you're going to fit pretty well back here. But this is a foot shorter than the Outback, and a lot of that room comes to the second row and the cargo area, so keep that in mind. Otherwise, the door panel looks about the same as the front. Look how wide that opens. I think Subaru doors probably open the widest in the class. Super easy to get dog kennels and car seats in here. And then the seats are super lightweight. It takes one hand to flop that thing up. The StarTech seat follows the theme into the back, and it's just really nice back here. Look at all that leg room. Look at all the controls you have. The front passenger seat is super far back, so that's why this didn't go all the way down. It's not because this is a small vehicle, but it's because that is unusually far back, and I'm pretty sure a 7'3" person was sitting up here earlier. Otherwise, you have that much room. You have some pamphlet and map pockets. You have vents, you have some plugins. No heated seats on this one though, just being a Wilderness. And then you have some cup holders. Otherwise, headroom is pretty good, but I think the Outback's probably gonna win because my hat is basically rubbing, especially when I come over to this side. Look at that right here. Because of the big sunshade, there's some room taken up right there. And that's standard on all Foresters now for 2025 and newer. But overall, this is a nice place to be, and I could easily enjoy the backseat of this car. And while I failed to mention on the Forester, the back seats of both of these vehicles can recline, so you can get maybe 7 or 8 more degrees. The door on this maybe doesn't open quite as far as the Forester, but it's still in the same class. It's still very good and a lot better than other vehicles. Door panel, it's all dark materials, but they age and hold up well. You can see that these seats, again, basically lay flat, while there's still a lot of room down there. But they're equally light. I like that the 40 split is on the driver's seat. And sitting in here, even when the seats are not reclined, you still have that much room, a little bit more than the Forester. You have all the same map pockets, vents. This even has heated seats, one of the upgraded creature comforts I mentioned earlier, and then has a slight cutout that the Forester doesn't have, probably because this sunroof is not as big. You also have the handle right here to recline it, so you can actually move it back pretty far. You can rest your arm right here, or you can easily lift that lightweight seat up and rest it on the center armrest that's designed for that. Otherwise, visibility is good enough, but it's not as good as the back of the Forester, and you're also not going to get quite as much natural light just throughout the vehicle as you do on that one. So if natural light makes you happy, the Forester might be the option for you. It even has Forester in its name versus Outback, although I guess a Forest is more shady than an Outback. Anyways, I digress. Ultimately, guys, I don't know if there is a clear winner. These are both really good, especially at their price points. How these are spec'd today at the Twin Falls Subaru, the Forester is about $8,000 cheaper than the Outback. But for that, you're missing 80 horsepower. You're missing an even more aggressive final axle ratio, a slightly larger tire, longer length, more stability on the road, being 400 pounds heavier, and heated rear outboard seats, to name a few of the options you're missing. But you're saving so much money, and you're getting better gas mileage, and you have a larger sunroof with more natural light peeking in. You also have physical gauges and climate controls. So honestly, there's a lot to love about either of these vehicles, and that's what makes a Subaru. At least that's what Subaru would tell us. Anyways, guys, ultimately what matters is your thoughts and your opinions. I like both of these vehicles for different reasons. I loved the Outback, but I try not to buy the same vehicle twice, so if I was buying one today, I'd probably want to save a little bit of money. I might personally pick the Forester between these two, but it's so hard to say because they're both fantastic. They're both really good vehicles. Their owners love them. Some of you guys have bought one and swapped it for the other, so I'd love to hear that story in the comments below. But ultimately, it's hard to decide it because it's hard to go wrong. Subaru is currently rated as the most reliable anticipated brand for this year. These are two of the best-selling trim levels of two of their highest-selling models. There's a lot of reasons why you might want to be interested in one of these. A lot of us like the outdoors. We like the idea of doing things outdoors. Even if we're not going to push these vehicles to their capability, their limit, we still like the idea of knowing that you can, knowing that you can drive over a sidewalk, knowing that you can go across the intermedium on an interstate. You can do a lot of interesting things with your Subaru. It's going to take you places that you might otherwise not want to go or push other vehicles, and I like that a lot about it. But if you guys get anything out of this video, if you liked it, please consider liking it. Comment your thoughts and opinions below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with that said, I wish you guys the best. I hope you take care, and until next time, see ya.